Alright, should be recording another draft science physics video yeah, presentation, we'll say this time. It's not a production. Very underproduced, actually. Anyway, the meaning of words. Just a whole nother conversation. Pyrrho video later, because yes, just playing games with words. Bullshit games. By truly Newtonian. See, this more phraseology, words. Ugh. I think I meant push-based and cause and effect-based. Yes, cause and effect would probably be nice words to use. So just say cause and effect-based instead of playing with the Newtonian thing. My dig against the Newtonian thing isn't anything to do with anything Newton did wrong. It just has to do with this idea that they put words in Newton's mouth. They say that Newton said gravity was instantaneous, when he didn't say that. He didn't know. He clearly knew that light was moving at some sort of speed. Didn't know what it was. And argued with Huygens about the speed in terms of whether or not light goes faster or slower when it goes through a medium. And Newton was wrong in his guess, and they were just guesses, pretty much. Some theory behind them, but I just mean, just Newton was still right about what light is. It's not a wave, but whatever. We can go into that. What the hell did grease monkey pop up there for? Oh, the mouse is over it. Okay. And the capturing of the cue ball would have been expressed by it rolling inside one of the pockets and reflecting off the walls inside the hollow table. No. So that's the whole point. The idea isn't that what we think of as reflections and what we think of as transferring momentum, we're not thinking about it what it actually is, that the momentum is the force and you're transferring something that's alive, so to speak. So you can think of it like a bird in a cage, and when you hit something, you give him a bunch of birds that are going to fly in one direction when they get out of the cage, kind of thing. It's an actual force that's been captured, something's been trapped. So conceptually, it's getting rid of this notion that something moves for free. Nothing moves for free, okay, or elementally, except for the photon, the little bits of energy. So whether it's in the form of heat or magnetism or some electric function or gravity or light, no matter what form it is in, that stuff is elementally moving. The forces, the force. And the rest of the stuff has to capture it to move. So the flying wrench, unlike Einstein's bullshit, flying wrenches are different than wrenches standing still. They're physically different. Their structure is different. And so I might as well get into that part, right? Because this is the whole freaking argument is about this idea that something real has to be happening between things. Things don't move for no reason. They have to be acted on by a force. Now that part of Newton's is explicitly clear, simple, and the idea, if they held to it, then we could get rid of all this ESP bullshit and this entanglement bullshit and this fact that you can have some magical thing that's not a force, some sort of bent space wave, all this other kind of nonsense. You have to have an actual physical force. You have to turn into actual bits that are elementally moving. They're the ones that are going to communicate between two things. There's not some other thing that can communicate between two things. The only thing that can communicate between two things is this elemental bit of momentum. The stuff moving perpetually forever. And the stuff that has to absorb energy to move. And that's the clear statement I'm making, arguing that that's what the evidence really points to. That completes the theory. That unifies physics, that model. Where this other model where, in one case bent space does it, in another case a virtual photon does it. It's completely inconsistent. Completely different universes, essentially. The universe that's making magnetism is completely different from the universe making gravity. The two don't have anything in common except they have figured out, they both move the same speed. And to them, that doesn't give them deductive reasoning. It doesn't give them cause to say, maybe they are the same thing, and maybe instead of allowing them to be these two separate independent concepts, that you have to make them into one. But no, they don't do that. Even though that piece of evidence that they're wearing the same size 14 Bruno Magli shoes doesn't indicate to them that maybe they should be looking for, tying that together, applying reasoning to that outstanding fact that it seems a little uncoincidental that two fundamentally different forces or things or mechanisms would both be running at exactly the same speed, that I could make two different, completely different, mechanical devices that, move on a road, and I would just by coincidence, they would both go exactly the same speed. Anyway, so that's my thing with Newton. They use Newton in a derogatory way, and therefore I'd rather you just say cause and effect, because yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about things, real causes, not imaginary ESP causes, not gremlins, not fairies, not bullshit made up nonsense, not dark matter, not dark, all this invisible special energy, special matter, special space that just pops into space, the little space making machines, all kinds of crap like that. No, something real, some real cause made out of something we really know exists, which is photons. Obviously we know they exist because we can see what they do. Okay, we can't see gravity doing its thing. Can't just look up in the sky and see the different pressure and look down and see a different pressure. Now, we can't see the pressure difference that gravity is creating, but we can deduce its existence. And that's the important fact. So anyway, all right. Proton and electron are the same size, ? About the simulation. I haven't messed with that yet. Clearly, we can understand, okay, they have the same charge. And clearly we can understand that protons end up in the nucleus and electrons end up on the outside. I mean, the evidence for that is kind of just overwhelming. So I think it's a pretty safe assumption that fundamentally protons and electrons are different, because somehow protons end up in the middle and electrons don't. Now, you could argue that every atom is made inside of high pressure, a sun. And you could argue that maybe the neutron somehow traps the proton, and it just happens that it happens to be the protons that in the high pressure. But you'd still have to have some difference between protons or electrons, or else you'd have this antimatter crap, this crap where the nucleus is made out of electrons and protons swirl around. Now, there's no evidence that any of this antimatter exists in any form in the real universe. So why should we sit there and say, because accelerator mathematics comes up with some notion that it exists, where there's no other, it's a mathematical thing. It's not anything where we have some physical evidence that there's this actual antimatter crap floating around anywhere. So I'd say yes, there's probably a difference. It might be just that one's bigger than the other. I've argued, so I didn't want to type all this crap, but I have already stated in videos that I theorize that the difference is that, the argument is that force is trapped, and that electrons and protons are traps for force. But they're going to be trapped so much, so they have to exchange what they have for the external world. So they have seats, essentially. They have a number of traps. And if you make the number odd, the behavior is going to be different than if you make the number even. That is, divisible by 3 dimensions evenly. Alright, so you just pick a number that's divisible by the 6 subdimensions, 12, 18, 24. Then you have the capacity for that object to be still in space. Alright, so maybe I'll get to it. I can give you a new diagram for what an electron or a proton looks like. Maybe it's not round at all. It's just a pattern. I've said this before. It's just a pattern in space, okay, of things going in directions. And the pressure maintains the pattern because of this reflection thing. The idea that everything always gets bounced back and forth in the pressure. There's always the inevitability that something will show up to push you back in the cage. So you're always bouncing back and forth. And you can't really go anywhere once you're doing this bouncing back and forth inside this pressurized force. If the force is equal, you just keep bouncing back and forth. And the force gets unequal, then you'll bounce back and forth, and you'll process in a direction. That's effectively what's moving the patterns. Now the problem is density. The electron could have 1,000,000 seats. It could have 500 seats. It could have 50 seats. Figuring out how many seats are in the boat, in terms of rowers and which way direction they're going, and the fact is you have to move all of them. And it's a little complicated. But the idea of it isn't complicated at all. The idea that something absorbs a force and exchanges, makes an exchange, that when one force goes in, some other force goes out. It's not the same force. The force doesn't really reflect. He goes in and he sends out somebody else, which means he's changed his identity. So it's like you're adding a color. You have the color red and you add a little bit of blue. Okay, you've changed the color. You took a little red out, but you added blue. Well, when you took the red out, you made the green stronger, let's say. So now the green that was in there is stronger because now you let one of the reds out. You know, that kind of thing. So you're changing what the thing is merely by having this little exchange that looks like a reflection, but it really isn't. It's a exchange. All right, so I pointed out that we measure mass of a proton based on its movability. So that's how we weigh things, and to weigh them, you have to have a force applied. So we see how much force they trap. That's simple. How much force does something trap when I throw it in gravity or throw it in light, or how much does it block? That'll tell us how transparent it is, and that's sort of the same idea. How transparent it is. Well, shine a light through it, and you'll see how many photons make it through. Same idea for weighing something, is its mass. And so the trick with the proton could just be is that protons don't really exist in free space, just like electrons don't really, because they're charged and they're going to find an imbalance to move into. The imbalance will find them, let's put it that way, and they're going to move. And protons are attracted to this idea of the neutron, and it's kind of a strong bond. So they're a little hard to put a proton on the scale. You have to put a whole bunch of protons on a scale, and I'm saying when they're doing that whole bunch of protons, it still has a lot of dirty neutrons in it, and so the weight they're getting is exaggerated because they can't really separate the proton into a free environment and then move it, okay, with some applied force. And obviously if they're applying the force that goes through it, that is, doesn't reflect off of it, they're going to think it's really, really heavy because they're having a hard time pushing it. So I'm just saying the mass of a proton, even conventional physics concedes those numbers keep changing because they don't have a good experiment for doing it. So I'm just saying I'm not going to tell you that, all right, because right now it's not really relevant. Right now I'm just trying to create the balance between electrons and protons in terms of creating dipoles. And I would argue that yes, that will come up because we are going to stick with a conventional model which has electrons on the outside and protons on the inside. So in some sense, for it to be a dipole, a normal dipole, you would have to argue the protons have to have a little more charge, and it might just be in the form of charge density. They have more, they're bigger. Okay, so that's why they exert more charge. But per size, or however you want to measure it, they have the same amount of charge. They're just as charged. It's just that they're more charged in a location, and therefore that's why they can be in the middle, is because their charge influence goes further than the electron's charge influence, because the electron is smaller and has a smaller radius and circumference, and the proton has a bigger one, and therefore its larger charge density will create more field effect. Alright, so he says, does that mean you don't have an answer to it yet? Well, yeah, it means that just like conventional physics, this is a detail that's a little hard to examine. Okay, so yeah, I don't have a way to measure the weight of a proton. So I don't know, I'm not sure they've measured the weight right, and I'm not sure what's necessary to build an atom. What size differential would be necessary? I'm saying there probably is a difference, but like I say, the difference could be as simple as the odd and even thing, right? Because if you use an odd number, you can sort of understand that if I use an odd number, there can't be, 4 bits going this way, 4 bits going that way, 4 bits this way, 4 bits that way, 4 bits, 4 bits. There can't be balance in the 3 dimensions. And so the object would always have to be moving a little bit somewhere. Always. So it would always be on the move. It would always have to be jiggling, moving, doing something. where if I give it an even number, it could stay in one place, and that would be the proton. The proton stays in a nucleus, it doesn't go very far, it doesn't move as much, and the electron does the opposite, moves a lot. Alright, enough. I mean, sorry to viewers, I mean, some of these questions are based on, very detailed conversations and have to do with a lot of nuance, and other conversations are just about the basic conceptual notions, the broader concepts. And there is a mixture, and I can't do much about that. Alright, if a green bit won't affect green matter, then how can blue matter shadow green matter? Did I miss something? Well, yeah, I mean, it gets a little bit convoluted. It seems fairly simple, so I guess I don't know what to say. So I said blue reflects green, green reflects blue. So we're back to just this simple outline of, let's go back to Mach gravity and just understand that if we didn't even bother with this sort of, I hate to erase it almost because it has to do with, see, I mean, the consequence of changing the model slightly is now it changes this relationship. Say if these were protons inside the, even though they're the wrong color, and this is the electron. I mean, the theory is that what I was theorizing, what made protons capable of being really close to each other, is the idea that there's an electron in between them. So that this is the neutron, an electron and a proton, and that conventional physics agrees with. And that because of this relationship, all the energy would leak out with the old model. Well, now it's not doing this explicit perpendicular thing, so now this electron is meaningless by the new diagram, because the electron energy, so to speak, goes right through the electron, hits the proton, and the proton just reflects between the protons like the electron isn't even there. The catch would be, as pointed out, this is an exchange, and it's not exchanging nothing for nothing, it's exchanging the real momentum for real momentum. There's every reason to believe that there would be, when things get close together, the argument would be, is that let's just for the purpose of the illustration, we'll use green, that green doesn't go straight through the blue. It goes through the blue based on how it's moving. So let's theorize about this relationship, that you have an electron and two protons. The trick would be is that this thing is moving. Now, what does moving mean? Well, it means it has seats, and they're more of them are occupied by one kind of rower than another kind of rower. So if you think in the 3 dimensions, let's just draw them as lines, and then you have the in and out, of course. You can sort of understand, let's just cut it to 2 to make it visually easy to understand, that if you were looking at an object and say it had some vector of momentum, that's always a combination where you can always take it, say it's moving this way, you can always cut that into 2, movement in one dimension versus movement in the other direction, and that's your vector. And so you can understand that if I was coming in at the same speed that these things are moving, well, I'll never hit this one, right? I'll hit this one and I'll hit this one. So now I've already changed it from, like if I took this as 100%, there's a 100% chance I'm going to hit one of these 4. Well, we've eliminated this one as a possibility because I can't catch up to something that's already going the speed of light away from me. So I can't catch the same speed as I'm going. I can't catch him and hit him. It's impossible. So, but I can hit this one, I can hit this one, I can hit this one, right? And so the argument would be if I hit something going in some tangential direction, that this thing that came in this direction would leave in this direction, and if I hit something going this way, it would leave in this direction. And so now you can sort of understand if there's something here, 50 more than, so this would happen 66.6, or whatever it is, percent of the time, right? Oh, wow, that's not even close to being on the board. Why am I drawing it way the fuck over there? I mean, that was really dumb. Let's just put this stupid eraser here, I guess. So I just do it real quick. So the idea is, if we just make the 2 dimensions, and you're coming at something that only has these 2 dimensions, you can't hit this. Okay, this is going away from you. So now this is your 100% of the time you're going to hit one of these. And you can deduce that you're going to hit this 66% of the time, and you're going to hit this 33% of the time. So you've already created a likelihood that there's going to be more stuff going out this way, right, than stuff going out in the direction of this other object. So that would be the catch, right? So now the stuff diverts. And that also explains why, this also can be part of the explanation of why photons diverge and end up diffracting. Yeah, because you've got an increased likelihood of hitting this or this compared to this. You're affecting one dimension more than you can affect the other dimensions. So you've created a likelihood of scatter, whatever you want to call it, and therefore you have reduced the force. So even though some of this force will get to this one, it won't be anything near the amount that would have happened if there wasn't this disproportion. So it's a way of fixing, it's a way of understanding how it won't be equal. There's an asymmetry because you can't hit the one going the direction you're going, and that creates an asymmetry in the dimensionality. Now obviously when you add the other two dimensions, you've enhanced that asymmetry quite a bit, because these two directions are going to be just like these two, and so you're going to have only one component here, and you're going to have four components there. So now you're down to 20%. So now it's 20% will be go straight through, and 80% will be some angle in this dimension or those two dimensions, this way or that way, or this way or that way. So we're 80 to 20. That's huge difference. All right, now, okay, well, I'll get to the next comment. So I don't know if I exactly got to your point, but that's a point worth making. They're all, worth making. Anyway, okay, so you just sound like a knuckle-dragging, bumping particle cultist to me. So the point is that clearly this has nothing to do with conventional physics. They call it particle physics. They don't believe in particles. They actually believe in bent space, which is essentially an ether. Einstein even said it was an ether. So what are you complaining about? They already agree with you. Yes, I don't belong to a cult. I belong to the dissidents, saying that's bullshit, okay? That's religion. As far as I'm concerned, you people are just arguing over God, gremlins, and pixies. You're not even coming close to evolution here. Not even close. And it's obvious, in my opinion, because you don't give a shit about the evidence. You don't give a shit about citing a fact. You make arguments that don't have any logical continuity. I'm giving you logical continuity. I'm saying we know what photons are, pretty much. We know they're something. We know the speed of these other forces is exactly the same speed as those photons. So why are we even having a debate about what that other shit is? Why do I even have to explain to you that, oh yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that we can't detect with a radio receiver. It's still there, right? You can take your AM radio and you can't get FM, you can't get microwaves, you can't get ultraviolet light, you can't get shit on your fucking radio. It's a little technically complicated detecting forces. That's a fact. You can't just open your force box and say, there's forces. Now, in a way, gravity is kind of obvious. It's right here in front of us. But you don't have enough imagination to understand the concept. And, again, the concept is so simple. Well, we'll wait till the other comment, because the other comment's going to oblige me to go through the simplicity of it. All right, but this is just rude nonsense. That somehow I'm a knuckle-dragging something because I'm citing evidence, I'm citing the experiments, and citing the facts, where Ken Wheeler lies, okay, overt lies. He has seen the images of the ferromaterial under a microscope. Now, have you done that? Have you honestly looked and said, okay, what does this stuff look like when it's doing whatever it's doing in a ferrocell? And you can see what it's doing, and it's doing exactly what it would do if they were iron filings. They're lining up exactly like iron filings. There's no mystery here. And this whole mystery is just created by an optical illusion. Because, like the mirrors in the funhouse, the mirrors are distorted because we're watching the light reflect. And so if you took the iron filings on a piece of paper, and maybe if you shine light a special way at them, or you coat them with a reflective chrome or something, maybe you could actually create the illusion of these lines, if you did a little bit of work to distort the reflections. Because that's all that's happening in the ferrocell, is where the light's reflecting. But anyway, go ahead and be deluded and a liar and a propagandist as you do it. With your little smiley, whatever this is, your little smiley Saturn or something, fuck you. You're an idiot. You're not making a rational argument. You're not citing any evidence. You're doing nothing but spouting crap. Authenticity seeker, he calls himself. Where's your authenticity? Where are your credentials? Where's your references? Where's your citing of this volume of evidence that supports your silly, wooey, mushy, toroidal, hyperberloid theory? Where's your evidence? You can't draw attraction and repulsion using your bullshit. You do understand that, right? That you have just no hope of making it make any sense. Right? I mean, swirly shit somehow creates attraction, and then swirly shit creates repulsion. Where's the explanation of the distinction? There's a huge difference between things moving together and things moving apart. Where have you explained why that huge difference exists and how it's manifested? Oh yeah, so you haven't done any of that. You little piece of shit. Alright, speaking of bug, Ken has more bacteria in his colon and in his brain, clearly, that is smarter than you. So again, I couldn't type this on Ken's video. So this is your brilliant, specific argument you're going to make. This is the best you can do to debunk somebody, is to cite nothing and to make what is a 12-year-old's joke. Brilliant. Not. Alright, so Superior Mind. Nice. Really liking the other sim too. By the way, I tried it out, new rules, and I'm seeing pairing and distance arrangement as expected mostly. I adjusted the ratios to tiny bit so there's a tiny bit more electron reflection. Now red, electrons are a bit smaller. Protons are allowed to get a bit closer to each other, and electrons are trying to space themselves out a lot, and the electrons and protons still tend to pair, allowing other protons to get a bit closer. I've noticed that if I use really high force speeds, I sometimes get runaway effects. Yeah, well, that's the whole problem, is it's really important how you establish momentum, because the argument is, as physics has learned, the electron's really easy to push when it's moving towards you, really hard to change its speed when it's moving away from you. So moving away, if it already has momentum and you're going to try to give it more momentum, it's harder and harder to make it go faster and faster. And that effect is real. And that effect is real in terms of drag. The faster you go, the more you're going to be dragged to a halt. So that has to be incorporated into the movement, because obviously if things start going way too fast, way faster than they could in reality. Let's just put it that way. So I spoke. So this is the nonsense here. So this guy, I have to take his word for it, right? Because he's an unaccountable piece of crap, as far as I can tell. So I spoke with the physicist who wanted to see your simulation. I don't have anything wrong with him saying he'd like to see it. I'm saying that Mach gravity doesn't have to be proven. Okay, so if I can prove the concept, and as I've stated, a physicist should be able to figure this part out. But anyway, I mean the proof of concept of the fact that if there was, okay, this is Mach gravity, this is really old theory. And this is how they teach, by the way, bent space. As basically, yeah, there's this bunch of pressure coming from the outside of everything, a fluid that moves towards the center of everything's gravity. Now, it just happens to be if you make a random field of arrows, if I just made a random field of arrows in all directions, the fact is, from every point in space, that random field's going to look exactly like this. If I'm sitting in the space, I'm not going to see the stuff that goes this way. I'm not going to see the stuff that goes that way. I'm only going to see the stuff heading right for me. And that's how space will look. If I'm the only thing in space, that's how it's going to look. Now, if I put something else in space, so now there's two things in space. The argument simply is, well, the stuff going this way, okay, can't get to my surface. I have a shadow here, a lack of things hitting me. And I do the same to the other guy. The stuff going straight for him, in which I'm blocking, creates a shadow on his surface. And there really isn't any choice. You're getting hit by more stuff in one direction than you are in the other direction, meaning you're going to move in that direction, and this is going to move in that direction. Now, what I'm saying is a physicist can get this. I shouldn't have to animate it. The logic is overt and in your face. It's an undeniable fact when you do it logically. When you take this random field, this random pressure, and you just figure it out. Okay, let me put something in here. Now let me figure out which arrows will hit it, and let me just erase all the arrows that won't hit it. When I erase all the arrows that won't hit it, all I'm going to be left with is this. That's what I'm going to be left with. Yeah, this is just a logical argument. You can't defeat it. It's undefeatable as an argument. This works. Now, this has a problem, though, because when this thing is moving through space, like it's supposed to be orbiting around the Earth, I mean, the Earth is orbiting around the Sun, because the Sun is creating a shadow on the Earth. It's shadowing the universe to the Earth. It's blocking forces that were heading right for us but can't get to us because they hit the fucking Sun. And that's why we're falling into the Sun. So that works. But the problem is as this was orbiting, okay, it would be plowing into more force coming this way, more force coming against it, okay, then it's going to hit force going with it, and therefore this thing would slow down. That's the flaw in mock gravity, the big flaw, okay? The big argument is drag. Now, what turns out to be an actual fact is, yeah, there is drag. Electrons and protons drag to a halt. You can't shoot them out of a gun and keep them going in space forever. They won't do it. They'll drag to a halt. They'll spiral in the famous cloud chamber images. What do you think is happening when those cloud chamber images? That's drag right in your face. It's showing you exactly what happens to electrons and protons. They run out of energy and spiral into something because they start moving slower and slower and slower, and then they just disappear because they don't have any more momentum. Therefore, they can't make light anymore, and they can't show us where they are anymore because they're not disturbing anything anymore because they've run out of velocity. Now, all I'm saying is a physicist should know that stuff. I shouldn't have to animate the drawing for him to figure it out. I can give him a simple thought experiment, as Einstein did. They're thought experiments. They're not that complicated. You can follow along. If you're a physicist, you should be able to follow along. All right, so let's play along with this bullshit. And I told him you thought a physicist should not need such things. Yes, I'm saying overtly, okay, a physicist doesn't need me to animate the concept. And so then when I just change colors here and I make one thing red, one thing blue, and I make two simple rules about, well, the red reflects and the blue goes through, he should be able to figure out, yeah, that'll work. That'll create reflections, sure, I understand. I understand ping pong paddle, right? I'm giving you a simple analogy, right? Do I need to actually create an animation of two ping pong paddles and have a ball moving a constant speed between them? And I have to explain to a fucking physicist that if I move the ping pong paddles closer, the ball's going to bounce. It's going to hit the surface more times per second. I have to explain that I have to give a physicist an animation of that. If that's your expectation, that yes, physicists need to have that animated for them. They need a cartoon to show them that concept because they can't think of it and they can't imagine it. Even though you can use your hands to illustrate it, they still can't get it. That this would be more energy than this, because there would be more impacts on the surface, and the impacts on the surface are an expression of energy. The same speed, it's always moving the same speed and it hits. That's an impact at the same speed, the same amount of momentum each time. I move the paddles closer together, twice as many impacts. That's got to mean twice as much energy going in a direction. Now, if a physicist can't get that, then fuck, I can insult physics even more legitimately. Because if physicists can't do that, if that's over the bar, if that's just asking way too much, then you have asked way too little. All right. And this is what he said. I'm paraphrasing for brevity. Doesn't seem that brief. In physics, like he's physics, we see if a proposal stands up to logical and mathematical rigor. I don't need any mathematical rigor beyond saying this is twice as many impacts. So that's the math. Okay, if it's twice as close, the distances is twice as less, and therefore there's twice as many impacts. So yeah, you want to convert that into math, that's fine with me, but I don't need any math to illustrate it. All right, lots of things sound good in the head, but if the numbers don't add up, well, that's not the argument here. There's no numbers to worry about. The concepts are simple. There's either a shadow or not a shadow. You don't need to know the density of the shadow or any of that stuff to say, does it make a shadow or does it not make a shadow? That concept is easy to understand. Does the energy get to the surface of the earth or does the energy not get it? Does the energy get to my feet or does it not get to my feet? That's the simple argument. Is the earth blocking energy that would hit my feet? If the earth wasn't there, what would be happening to me? There'd be a bunch more energy hitting my fucking feet. I mean, that concept is too easy. All right, physics is unforgiving. No, it's retarded, as you're doing it. Based on no evidence, and you make up pixies. Dark matter bullshit. Okay, it's all about the numbers. No, it's all about bullshit. You don't even have rational numbers. I mean, there's no rational math for, well, let's just create a halo of dark matter around the galaxy. There's no math that says you can do that. Your fucking contrivance did it. No math did it. You did it. You just said, I'm going to make it up. Where do I need to fix my math? What do I need to do to fix my math? Oh, I need to create a special alien force that changes everything. I mean, this is just such bullshit. Let's see. Lots of things good in the head. If the numbers don't add up, again, there's no number. Nobody's threatening me with any numbers. Go ahead, threaten me with an equation, and I'll point out how your equation is exactly what I'm saying. Every one of Maxwell's equations is perfectly consistent with this. Maxwell's drawings are perfectly consistent with this explanation. So don't give me your horse shit. There's no magical math that this is in conflict with. If you think there is, then cite the math. Okay, then the proposal must be abandoned or amended. So again, there's no argument here. There's no specifics about any mathematical concept I have violated by pointing out the obvious, that if there was Mach gravity, if there was a particle force, that shadowing would in effect be shadowing momentum. Okay, physics is unforgiving. It is all about the numbers. Crayon drawings don't build spaceships. Well, I think they do. That's exactly how spaceships are started. As they start thinking about aerodynamics, say, well, maybe we better make a pointy end. And then, and then the fins, and I'm sure there was lots of fucking drawings. Okay, maybe they were chalkboard drawings, but that's how it starts, asshole. So this guy isn't a physicist. He isn't even a thinker. This is just horseshit some troll made up. I can't imagine a physicist saying that. Crayon drawings don't build spaceships. I've seen the drawings. I've seen the schematics. What's what? Because they're pencil? It somehow makes a difference? These aren't fucking crayons, by the way. You know, they're dry erase markers, which I've seen a ton of physicists use. Amazing bullshit. I already saw plenty of logical flaws in Gary's reasoning. Now, where the fuck are they? Can you cite one of them, Mr. Physicist? So this coward has made up a fake physicist and given him fake arguments that he found something wrong with my reasoning. He couldn't cite what the wrongness is. He can't explain it. He just says it's there. What a pile of crap. And was politely doing him a favor. Where? Where did you do that? Where did you do something polite? You just show me your politeness. Have your friend repost your politeness. All right, suggesting he apply mathematical rigor to his ideas. Why? I don't need to redo the fucking math. As proven already, Newton's equation is correct. Now, I would argue it's not complete in the sense that gravity, you create gravity that other people are affected by, and I'm affected by gravity other things create. So the equation is incomplete in the sense that it can't really express what gravity is by calling it one force when the force, the amount I'm moving the earth is real. Okay, one Gary-sized clump of the earth is moving towards me inside the earth right now. It's doing it. Okay, it's moving towards me. That much mass is moving towards me as my mass moves towards it. That is, if I jump on a chair anyway and move. You'll see the masses move. It happens. A clump the size of the earth inside the sun is moving towards the earth. The sun's center of gravity is changed by the earth's presence. Now, it's not much of a change, a few millimeters, but it's a change. All right, you didn't find anything wrong with my reasoning, fucking cunt. Anyway, and was politely doing him a favor by suggesting he apply mathematical rigor to his ideas. Again, no, the ideas are the difference between you say a bent space does it, I say a force does it. I'm defending essentially mock gravity, all right, and you're defending some vaporous nonsense about some bent fucking time dimension and some other horse shit. I'm saying I have a ton of evidence supporting this theory. The evidence that electrons are dragged to a halt. Do you have some other explanation for why you can't shoot an electron to the moon? Why don't you explain why you can't, in any way possible, you can't shoot an electron to the moon? Why don't you explain that if I send 1 trillion electrons from the space shuttle, or from, well, obviously that's not the space station, none of them will get to the moon. Not one of them. Why don't you explain why? All right. Gary has 4 options. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fuck you all over the place. The option is to find you revolting as an arguer. Why don't you make a real argument, fuckhead? A real physics argument. A real logical argument. He can get a positive result from the simulation. We already have. I mean, I can show you where, the 2 red things are shooting red back and forth, in a panic. And they're all sitting in there, the magnification of the force is there. It's doing exactly, the concept is already proven. All I have to do is get the proportions right. So that's all that's left to do. It's just tweaking it. The concept of attraction and repulsion have already been demonstrated. And they shouldn't even need to be, because there's no way to avoid them. There's no way of it not working. It can't possibly fail to work, as I've already illustrated. The shadows are real. They're not imaginary. They really happen. And the ping pong ball getting trapped between and it becoming more energy when you bring the 2 things together, that fact that this is going to be more pressure and it's going to want to, both things are going to want to, in a very strong way, repel each other, is already a fact. The simulation doesn't make it a fact. It's already a fact. You can't evade it. All right. Anyway, proving his doubters wrong. Well, I don't even know if that is the definition of proof, frankly. Proof should go a lot deeper than that. That's what you even have a superficial definition of proof. The fact that I can create some model that simulates it doesn't mean that I've really simulated it. Doesn't mean that it works for everything. Doesn't mean that it's going to explain how protons are close together. It doesn't explain lots of things that won't be explained by it. So you can't decide whether it's right or wrong because it either has something missing or because it has something too much. I mean, drag was, in my opinion, the idea that there would be a drag problem seems really overcomable. We know there isn't a drag problem for matter. Big heavy things can hurl through space just fine, just like they were photons. They can just maintain their speed. But we know that little things can't. So that should be sort of a giveaway. The little elemental matter can't do what the big matter does. And that should be an indication that, hey, That's interesting. Alright, I'm back. This planet is fucking retarded. For a week I've been trying to send, they misdelivered some mail. I put it in the mailbox. I put a red ribbon hanging out of the mailbox. They don't take it. I put a sign on the object. Misdelivered, please take. They drop it on the ground. I mean, a whole week of just playing this stupid game, and this stupid mail person can't figure it out. And you're saying, well, should I complain? Well, if I complain, what's going to happen? Well, then they're going to just fuck my mail, right? They're literally going to fuck it. Yeah. But, I mean, it just... What's on the civil service exam exactly? I mean, how could you get the ABCs of your fucking job wrong? There's a big red ribbon hanging out of a black mailbox. There's a sign inside the mailbox. Take this. They put it on the ground. Yeah, anyway. Just stuff you see, just saying there's just no hope for this planet. I mean, when people can't do the simplest things, and they can't accomplish it. It's just too demanding. Anyway. So we're having this argument with physicists who can't. So let's just understand. Okay, so the theory of mock gravity. Nobody needs a drawing. Okay, I mean, Lesage provided some drawings of Lesage gravity, just kind of simple ideas of just what I just did here. There's no animations, there's no this, there's no that. You don't prove the concept with an animation, none of that. And Feynman didn't use any animations when he explained how he didn't even draw it. Okay, he didn't even draw a drag. He just made the argument that, well, if you're running in the rain, you're going to hit more rain in front of you than from behind you. And so, if you're moving into a force, you're going to hit more going this way than the stuff going the same way you are, because the stuff going the same way you are can't get to you as quickly, right? Now, Einstein blew all of that up, right? Because none of that's true in their Einstein world, But anyway, that's just so... when you think of it, you give it a little thought. None of this stuff has so little continuity. The rules they make in quantum mechanics have nothing to do with the rules they make for relativity. It's just such a pile of shit. But anyway, so you don't prove ideas by showing a simulation. You make an argument. And that's what I've made, is a ton of arguments, and they're really not complicated arguments. Shadows is not a complicated concept, and ping pong ball trapped between two paddles is not a complicated concept. And you're telling me, well, until the physicist sees the simulation, he can't make a judgment. Fuck you. This is fucking idiotic. Anyway, 3, he can get a negative result from the simulation and accept that his ideas fail or amend them. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, that's right. If it doesn't work, you try something else. That's how they made space shuttles. It was a lot of trial and error, and they sort of knew that, these tiles is not a great idea, and they're insanely expensive, but they just couldn't figure out any other way to do it. He can get a negative result from the simulation and blame the simulation or simulator. So this is who's to pay any attention to this nonsense? This is just gibberish. What does this have to do with whether mock gravity exists? Well, if mock gravity is true or not true because of a simulation? Are you fucking insane? Bent space needs a simulator. If there's not, you have to simulate it. No, you don't. You can understand it. And again, it's not even taught as bent space. It's taught as an anti-convergence. So fuck you again. He can abandon the simulation altogether and continue complaining why no one takes him seriously. So obviously, again, if this is a physicist, I say it isn't. I say this guy's a fucking liar and a troll, and that's all. Okay, there's no evidence. This is anyone who went to college making idiotic arguments. A college and took a science degree, and he's making idiotic arguments like this. Viewers can stay tuned to see which of the 4 possibilities unfold. Well, the one possibility is you're a fucking asshole, and I'll pretty much prove that what you're saying here is complete nonsense, that anybody with any kind of meager high school education can understand ping pong ball in between two paddles, that even 6th graders could do it, maybe 4th, 3rd. 1st graders could get it. In first grade, they taught me mathematics by having a little scale and putting the numbers were weighted, and so you put two twos on and it weighs as much as a 4. Shit. But you can't get ping pong paddle and ping pong ball. All right, without a simulation. Fuck you. Fuck this bullshit. All right. Stupid argument. So that's the extent of its counter argument. Again, not a single fact, not a single citation to an experiment, not a citation to an equation, not a citation to anything that in any way demonstrates how anything I've said is wrong. Why don't you show me the experiment where they shot electrons to the moon? Why don't you show me where they shoot electrons miles of distance? Why don't you show me it? You say it happens, right? I mean, that's you're saying it must happen because if there is no drag, right? You're saying there's no drag. Drag isn't real. It doesn't happen. Therefore, mock gravity has to be wrong because there's no drag. Well, guess what? There really is. For the real matter, the little bits that make up matter are dragging all over the place. And somehow, the more complex matter, the matter made out of matter, the matter made out of electrons and protons, finds a way to overcome that. And that's what you have to figure out. That's what you have to explain. You haven't even found that fact. So you can't even discover the truth because you haven't even discovered the fact that your assumption is wrong, that there's no drag. There is. All right. Fucking assholes everywhere. Jesus. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know if it's really worth mentioning, but somebody asked about my computer, and somebody's offered me, their used computer, and it's better than what I got. So what the hell? But yeah, the one I'm using, I actually got from somebody who watches draft physics videos. But it's a nice economy kind of computer. It's efficient, and the one I paid $100 for with the screen is even more efficient in the sense that it's essentially a laptop inside of a computer. It uses like 15 watts or something. Anyway, I mean, it's not very power hungry. But anyway, so I just want to clear that. I mean, there's the Atom guy is also in the past. I haven't paid for a computer since the first computer I bought. The rest of them are all kind of somebody else's garbage, or I bought like a motherboard on eBay or something. But generally speaking, I don't buy computers. I find them, or I buy them cheap. I bought one for $10. So $10. What the hell? So anyway, enough. So let's play some of this Pyrrho shit. And it's just shit. I mean, he doesn't say anything that could mean anything to anybody who's like thinking, trying to understand. Where he's actually asserting something with a rational argument. He's just basically saying that we're all just making assertions and blah 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 blah. We're all just talking, and it's not just all talk. The statements mean something, and you can tell the difference between gremlin, pixie, Sasquatch, and Moses theories, and evolution. You can tell the difference between those kind. The ones that are just kind of made up because people want to believe in horse shit, and the ones that are basically somebody honestly going out and trying to deduce the truth. And there is only deduction. There's no induction. There's no all this other crap. There's one thing. You combine a bunch of facts, and the facts point somewhere. There's logic. That's it. You don't even need the word deduction. You just need the word logic, and just understand there's rules of logic, non-contradiction, all those kind of things. It's really kind of simple in the form of just saying if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it has the organs of a duck and it has a bill and it has eyes like a duck, it's a duck.
But that there's this thread of thought through all living things. That's not endorsed by science yet.
And it'll never be endorsed by science ever. Okay, that thought is something that happens outside of your brain, that my feet are thinking, or my liver's thinking, or my kidneys want, and they're hungry and they're thirsty and they're all this bullshit. No, rational people understand there's a volume of evidence, just a huge amount of evidence, that all of the function happens inside the brain, and that you can break it so easy. Just do a little bit of jello jiggling inside of that little gray matter, and you've completely fucked the consciousness. Just turn it into rubbish. You can turn it into an idiot, you can turn it into a lunatic, you can turn it into all kinds of bullshit just by doing a tiny, tiny little bit of changes to the gray matter. That's your brain. That's where you is.
But on the other hand, I predicted things right here on YouTube.
You didn't predict shit. So this is just more claims with no evidence. So here he goes.
Be a lot of quantum mechanical biology.
So what is quantum mechanical? So his definition of quantum mechanical is what? That there's a probability that there'll be some diffraction? No, we're arguing about causes. So you have to accept responsibility for your statement. You can't just call it quantum mechanics and say, well, quantum mechanics can be anything. Quantum mechanics has to be explicitly something. Now, quantum mechanics, from most people's perspective, is the fact that it's random. Okay, that the diffraction has nothing to do with, that it doesn't matter whether the photon goes right next to the slit or the photon goes right in the middle of the slit. Those two photons have the same probability of going somewhere. That's your theory. Okay, that's quantum mechanics. And you won't find that anywhere. You won't find any proof of that anywhere. And I've already reiterated many times, you'll find exactly the opposite proof. And the multi-slit experiments prove that. Because the multi-slits transmit images. And you can't transmit an image by turning this photon into any photon. That won't make an image.
And I predicted that before quantum mechanical biology was proved. And now
Okay, proved. So this is the way, he's talking about junk science, right? Anti-scientists. And then he says something like, proved. They've proved nothing, no such thing. They've validated no quantum mechanical theory, no multiverses, no Copenhagen, no anything. They haven't validated any element of Heisenberg or any of this crap with biology. And just think about it logically. The proof won't be in biology. The proof is in physics. The proof is in electrons and protons and their interactions. You will not find the proof in atoms. You have to find it in the nuclear function. That's where quantum mechanics happens. Quantum mechanics is about electrons and protons. Quantum mechanics isn't about anything else. And of course the force that acts on them.
now it's like, the way the pigeon compasses, how homing pigeons work. Quantum.
Says you. There's just no proof that you can't explain it with any other model. There's no proof that it proves Heisenberg or proves any of the basic foundations of quantum mechanics. It doesn't prove light's a wave, doesn't do any of that stuff. So this is just more horse shit. Where have they proven that it's quantum mechanical? That that's the only possible explanation, that we've eliminated all other possibilities. We have proof. Where's the volume of evidence? There's not going to be any. There's just going to be their interpretation again. They're just going to say, we can interpret it as. They haven't proven it. Just as I can jam a radio signal. And I can say, well, it's radio jamming. And then you'll say, no, it's wave interference. Well, because you said it, you've now proven it's wave interference? No, you haven't proven it wasn't jamming. You've just said, I'm going to believe it's wave interference. Even though the evidence is equal, there's just as much evidence that it's just jamming. But you're going to say it's wave interference. You've proven it. You haven't proven anything. Eddington proves that light is bent by gravity. This marginal experiment that's never been repeated, that they won't do, even though they have thousands of satellites that could do it, big cameras, big focal lenses. They could do it every single day. They could do it over and over and over again, hour after hour. Keep proving it. They haven't done it once. Not once. But they've proven it.
How photosynthesis works?
He says, so again, where's the evidence? Show me the evidence of a proof. Show me where you could throw somebody in jail for 100 years based on your evidence. Your evidence is so strong that you would be willing to have somebody executed on evidence that was just as strong. So if I had evidence of somebody being a murderer that was just as strong as your evidence, your proof, you would feel okay about sending them to jail for 100 years based on the evidence you have, the proof you've created. So this is why they're the junk scientists. They're the ones with the outrageous claims, the extraordinary behavior, the bizarre behavior, and the meager evidence. And this argument has always been about their meager evidence. And where does he show how the evidence is strong? Where does he return the argument by saying, no, we have a whole volume of evidence, and this is it. Here it is. Does he show us the images? Does he show us the hard evidence? No. He shows us garbage. He shows us some galactic image where the Einstein ring is loopy and bent and crooked. It's not the same on one side as the other side. Complete violations of the mathematical mandate. And he'll say, look, isn't that a great piece of evidence? No, it's a bear, and you're saying it's Sasquatch.
Mechanical. There's a bunch of examples.
No, there isn't. So again, just more hyperbole, more exaggeration, more claims made from nothing, absolutely nothing extraordinary. That we have to have Heisenberg or you can't make sense of it. No such proof.
And I called that here. It doesn't matter.
You didn't call anything. Okay? So it's just more bullshit. I'm the one making the good calls. The good call is that you'll find out that you can't bend photons with any force. Forces don't act on forces.
If it gets confirmed, but I don't deny the results of science. There's two things you do as a natural.
Again, deny the results of science, which are evidence that is meager, weak. So again, I'm denying the results of science by saying, well, you haven't repeated the Eddington experiment successfully, certainly not with good photographs. And Eddington didn't have those. Both. They send out two teams. Both teams had physical problems. One bad weather, one bad mechanical temperature problems. Both of them got crappy results. Just the truth. And he says it's proof. It's been proven.
For a philosopher, where you're not an actual physicist or scientist, one.
So more horseshit. There's no such thing as philosophy. There's no such thing as these distinctions. There's statements that are either true or untrue. That's all we can do is thinking objects, is to sit there and say, what is true? Can I write a sentence that we can be really sure is correct? Does it go too far? Does it say too little? Does it say too much? What can we say about things? And I make arguments like, well, you can certainly say water's wet because the word wet was invented to describe the wetness of water. So we already invented the word for the explicit purpose, so that's a sure thing. And everything else is a little bit doubtable, right? So when you're using vocabulary to describe something or compare something, that's all we have. And so I'm just saying, as a deductive argument, the evidence for evolution, for example, again, it's a volume of evidence, and it covers multiple sciences, in the sense the geology says so, the biology says so, the chemistry says so. It's verified from all directions. That's a proof.
You make a prediction of where it's going. For fun, And two,
so anyway, this for fun crap that I can't relate to at all. It's not fun having wrong answers. It's not fun not knowing the right answer. So, you're satisfied with wishy-washy mush, bent space, virtual photon, ambiguous notions of realness.
You might make an interpretation. Like the scientists, after the Newtonian era, after modernism, they got kind of spooked.
After modernism. So he calls it the Newtonian era modernism, which doesn't even... What does that jargon mean? What is that crap? After modernism. After Newton, you became shitty scientists. Newton didn't make claims for things he couldn't know. He didn't tell you how fast light was moving because he didn't know. He didn't tell you what was causing gravity because he didn't know. You assholes say you know, and then you say you've proven. And you don't have anything even close to a proof. You have shreds of evidence, and they're some of them are shreds you can know can't lead anywhere. They can't go anywhere. They can't be true.
Making all these physical, or rather philosophical, predictions based on how physics was turning out. They realized it was a little more tricky than that, sort of a skeptical result.
an amazing statement. No, they realized exactly the opposite, that they could just pull things out of their ass and the public will eat it, and that's all that matters. So pull shit out of your ass and they'll eat it.
That's cultural. It's just that's what's happened in academic physics. They're like, you know what? Let's just do the mathematical predictions and stop saying what this stuff means philosophically. There's obvious.
Okay, so he's going to go into some bullshit about elitism in science and some other kind of crap, and that's not terribly interesting. So let's jump ahead. Clearly, it's a problem, and that might be why they're all phantasmagoricals, is because they've never had to live in reality.
This kind of version of physical reality. I happen to believe it as well.
So he's saying he believes in physical reality, yet it's okay to talk about ESP and magical forces and gremlins. So he believes in evolution, but he doesn't mind wasting time talking about magical ways that organisms evolve or change. That the gremlin cast a spell on them, and that's why elephants have trunks. It's okay, I'll have that conversation. That's reasonable. No, it's totally unreasonable. If you have the right answer, you have no patience for the wrong answer.
But it's just one model, and it's interesting.
It's just one model. Yeah, reality. Something actually cause and effect is just one model. No, it's only one model that's pretty much validated by every real experiment we've ever done. Conservation of energy, as real a law as you can get.
Because I don't think they really judge at that level of what does it mean to say, like I was just watching Bill Gates or Gade or whatever it is.
So amazing. So he had it right, Bill Gates. This is just an example of Pyrrho, right? I mean, he's watched so few of his videos, Bill Gates' videos, that he's never heard Bill Gates say Bill Gates, say his name. I mean, that's the easiest way to know what his name is, right? Is to watch his videos and watch him use his own name. So he hasn't watched enough Bill Gates to have heard Bill Gates say the word Bill Gates. And yet he's going to talk his shit about what his theory is. It is shit, but I'm just saying.
I talk about what's an object and what can count as an object in particles versus concepts.
So he threw my name in here as if I'm doing the same thing. I've made videos pointing out how I couldn't give a shit about this stupid definition of an object. I mean, as long as you have a cause and effect chain, I don't give a shit whether the effect is it ran or it bounced up and down. I mean, concepts that are actions don't need to be objects. Obviously, there has to be an object doing the action, but beyond that, what you're just really saying is, I don't believe that something does something because some unknown magical ESP thing happens. Some magical force enters the brain and the brain is changed by the magical force. That's the simple statement. Yes, until you can prove something extraordinary, it doesn't exist. So you can demonstrate with a shred of evidence it doesn't exist. There's no Heisenberg until you show me something blipping in and out of reality. It's here and then it just blips over here and it just blips over there and it just blips over there. Well, that's an extraordinary claim, that it just spontaneously does all this blipping bullshit. Well, why don't you show me some evidence indicating where I need to believe that? Why that's a necessary truth and not one you've just chosen to believe.
And it's like, well, the idea of an object is automatically already a concept. And how do you feel like you can assert that that is a particular requirement? To me, we have a bunch of information, right, flowing.
So this is more horse shit, that we're going to call physical interactions information. So when the ping pong ball is between the two paddles, this is information bouncing back and forth. Why would I waste my time with some kind of crap like that? Obviously, it has a cause and effect chain. I can follow the ball through its life history. It's billions and billions of years. It's been somewhere doing something, and it has a history. Now, I can't know it, so who cares? And the history is going to sort of be written on the fact of where it is at this particular time. It couldn't have gotten there without its history. I couldn't be who I am wearing this stupid jacket with this hair, with these eyes, blah, blah, blah. The history has dictated it. There's no other way it could have been.
Through, if I look at the screen right now, there's a picture of the pond, behind me, and I'm receiving that.
Yes, it's an image, okay, made out of an arrangement, a pattern, okay, that you can recognize with your brain. On all of those are cause and effect processes. All of them require physics. They require little bits to hit other little bits to get the information to you. Real things have to travel real space and distance and interact with other things for the information to travel and to move and to change things. The force can't change things till the force moves to where the thing is.
Receiving that picture.
And I mean change in the sense of it's obviously not changing because it's the script, it's the rules. The shadow will be created. I just mean change in the sense that if I imaginarily had the power to take the thing out, you would see a different result. So clearly the thing being there is changing what happens to the other thing. That's the only way I'm using the word change. You can't change cause and effect. Just can't do it.
Here comes the picture. So I know that I have the picture, but in what sense is it, oh, it has to be physical? Well, no, it has to be sensible, right?
No. Again, so it's back to the same old crap. The definition of sensible is physical. Just as Darwin's evolution is a physical explanation. I mean, he doesn't go into chromosomes and all that because he didn't know they existed. But it's clearly a physical explanation. You see all the long, hard details to get where you're going. The necessary time and all the other right ingredients are in there as physical events. The physical events have to happen. The asteroid has to hit, the dinosaurs have to get too cold, blah, 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 blah. Certain things have to happen for the history to be the history. They don't happen because a pixie cast a spell.
It has to have colors or sounds or things that I can sense. And yet also because I'm just...
So again, it's not about what you can sense. It's what you can detect, deduce to exist. Again, dropping this pen, okay, I'm not sensing the gravity when I watch the pen fall. Like I don't catch it in my hand, let's say we just let it fall. It doesn't affect me in any substantial, sensual way besides the visual way, in the sense that I see it in different locations in time, and I understand what that means. It means it's traveling a momentum, a distance, and it's falling at a rate. It's doing it. It's moving at a rate, and I have to account for why is it doing that. Well, I say there's something making it do that. Conventional physics says nothing does it. Some imaginary bent geodesic-y thing, some unknown fluid, as Susskind would put it, is somehow moving it.
An animal, it could have other things I can't sense. And in fact, I have discovered that it has things that I didn't sense in the past. It probably has things that I'm not sensing yet in the present. Right? Like there's x-rays, and I can't see those, but I can have an x-ray camera, and I can see them, but I don't do that all the time. But let's say I did do it all the time. There's probably an L-ray and a V-ray and kinds of sounds I don't get. Oh yeah, there's frequencies I can't hear. And so,
yeah, exactly. And if physicists recognize that simple fact that we're not going to be able to see everything, that we shouldn't assume that because we can't see everything that every kind of ghost is real, that every kind of Heisenberg bullshit is a real concept, that it's some sort of principle or law when it's just made up crap. It just expedites, gives you an excuse to say, instead of explaining why it happens, you can just say it happens by magic.
So I know there's information outside of the spectrum that I can detect, and that there's information inside it. And that's what I really know. I don't know this requirement that things have to bump into each other, or things can't, right?
Yes, interaction has to take the form of a mechanism. You can't have interaction without a mechanism. You're saying I put the paddles out and the magic ball does all the work. And it's not physical in any way, and it's not real in any way, and it just makes the paddles move away from each other. No ball required. The paddles just hate each other. They have so much hate juice inside of them, but they don't have to spit the juice at each other. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to transmit anything. They don't have to transmit and receive because there's no mechanism for it, and you're just saying that's okay with you. You're satisfied with a cause and effect explanation that explains the causes and effects by just saying, well, it magically happens. Yeah, that's a huge distinction in my opinion. Any scientist who doesn't care about being told what the mechanism is a shitty scientist. I'll just say that overtly. You're a shitty scientist if you don't care about mechanisms, because that's essentially your job. You can't describe cause and effect. You can't make truth statements about reality, all right, if you don't care about what causes the effect.
Now the physics looks like things don't actually bump into each other. Like the Pauli exclusion principle is like things that are exactly the same.
So he cites another stupid mathematical piece of shit that doesn't mean anything in real physics. And clearly you could deduce that things don't really hit each other, like electrons don't really hit each other, because just like gravity changes directions of things, electrons are emitting a repulsive force to each other. They're reflecting energy at each other. They're ping pong battles. And they just can't find a piece of space where there's no ball between them. So there's no way they can get too close to each other. They can have just one ball, and that'll make them, less pressure. But there's always some pressure out. And there's always the problem is the closer you get, that pressure gets louder and louder. The number of hits gets more and more and more and more and more to an almost infinite point. So yeah, they never really hit each other. Two paddles can never hit each other because there's always a ball in the way. That's your explanation. You don't need any Pauli exclusion principle bullshit. You need a concept. What would cause repulsion? Something between the two objects that's trapped. That would cause it.
They can't bump into each other. As far as I know, things can't bump into each other. So why would I make a supposition and project it out into the universe about this physical requirement that stuff, well, that's not real enough. A concept isn't real enough. I mean, these are all concepts, and we're talking about concepts.
Yeah, they're not every concept is, again, he's not making any distinction between a scientific theory like evolution and just complete made up horseshit like gremlins and pixies and fairies and Tinkerbell and God and Moses and burning bushes and all kinds of other horseshit. He's not making any distinction between complete made up fantasy notions, okay, and something that you've deduced because you've gone through all of the beaks changing and the shells changing and the lizard changing and all the differences, and recognize that we can deduce from the geology of the islands. The islands are different ages, and the longer the island's been around, the more sophisticated the evolution. The less long the island's been around, the less biology. I mean, lots of ways to deduce the truth. And the truth is the physical theory. The truth isn't the magical giraffe made its neck longer by wishing, I wish I had a longer neck.
Because the physical world just comes to us as little bits of information, the tip of an iceberg of information, and we're making deduction and induction, right? So the deduction is where we take two things we notice and we divide down how it works on the inside, and induction is how we expand out.
Yeah, just like I said, there's no distinction. There's reasoning with facts, evidence, and that's all there is. You take facts, you apply reason, logic to the facts, and the facts will point to the next fact. They will show you what will fit and what won't fit.
Multiply out to things we haven't experienced. And that's what we're doing with information. How things bump together, that's totally an open issue. That the green thing is...
No, that's not an open issue. The issue is whether we are allowed to say pixies did it, gremlins did it, ghosts did it, magic invisible men did it. Are we allowed to go into the courtroom and make a case, okay, that we can just say, you can never convict my client because you can't rule out the invisible man did it? I can create a model of the crime where, and they did this in the OJ trial. They made up South American drug dealers and all kinds of bullshit. They made up a whole fake story for which there was zero evidence verifying it or corroborating it in any way, just zero evidence. And they just made it up. And sure, you can do that. You just make up some story about, well, there's this guy, he drank a potion, became the invisible man. And it's really easy to get people's DNA. I mean, all you got to do is pull a hair out of their head, there, got his DNA. So they spread his DNA. He has a little DNA making box. He bought it on eBay. Made some DNA, spread on the scene. no problem. Threw some extra hairs on just for fun. Got some fingerprint glue. Made some fingerprints. Invisible Man did it. You can't convict my client. It's clear that model, the Invisible Man model, fits perfectly. Why might you buy that? And I'm just saying, I think reasonable people don't buy that because they know this world doesn't work that way. It doesn't have physics for that. There is no example of it. We don't see Heisenberging happening. We don't see all this magical wooey entanglement crap. We don't see any of this entanglement in the sense that obviously these biological organisms being in this environment for almost 1 billion years, and somehow they haven't capitalized on this great ESP force. Why, if it existed, they'd be capitalizing on it all over the place. We'd be full of these magical powers if these magical powers could fucking exist. But who they give the magical powers to? They give it to the littlest things in the goddamn universe. The things we can't see, the things we can't dissect, they're the things with all the pixie powers. Isn't that a condemnation right in itself that's so obvious? That they're only using this Invisible Man excuse for the stuff we can't see? There's no Invisible Man excuses for the stuff we do see. So, yeah, just horse shit. Enough of a rant. Pathetic. So he doesn't make any videos on science. He doesn't make any assertions that he backs up with evidence. So there's no evidence of anything he asserts. There's no citation to a single experiment. Electron spin. Why don't you take on that subject and explain to me how you have a volume of evidence that electrons spin? That electrons are really dipoles. Why don't you show me the experiment that demonstrates an electron behaving like a dipole? A magnet. Why don't you show me electrons doing that? Why don't you explain to me how electrons don't perfectly fit the definition of the magnetic monopole? If you were to describe what a magnetic monopole would look like in space, why don't you explain how the electron doesn't perfectly fit the description? I mean, these people are just so full of shit. They're just disgusting. Anyway, enough. God, I hate this planet. Assholes everywhere. Can't deliver mail, can't have a rational conversation, can't stay within the boundaries of logic. It's a horrible place. People suck.